business athletes, what is going on? And welcome back for another action-packed episode. This one, how real transformation actually happens and why most programs fail. Why most programs fail and how real transformation actually occurs. Long-term, long-lasting transformation. So I'm going to be diving into some of the mechanics around the common patterns that I see that you probably do that are keeping you stuck. And one of them, for example, is the way that people approach 75 hard. It's the way that people approach dieting in general. It's the things that they focus on when they diet. And it's the things they attempt to do. And I really wanted to make this discussion useful from a perspective of helping illuminate and shine some more lights on some of your blind spots. And what I'm also going to do is I'm going to talk about some of the different coaching models that I have and why they're so effective and why they're different. Because, you know, the classic thing, right? People say, I've tried everything. Nothing works. And we all know that's not true. We all know that you haven't tried everything. Yeah, you've tried certain things, but very often we don't know what we don't know. And the thing that I want to help you sort of grasp is that, you know, you don't fail because you're lazy. Most of the time you fail because the systems and the tools that you are using suck. And you don't know they suck. You think that's a part of the process. You think that's required, and they're garbage. And you don't have a good support mechanism around you. It's a bit like you going to the garden center at Home Depot and buying some beautiful roses, and bringing those roses home, and you decide you're going to plant them in clay. And you can throw a bunch of fertilizer on them. You can water the heck out of them every day. They might even get a lot of sunlight. How likely do you think that your beautiful roses from Home Depot are going to be in terms of flourishing and growing if you're growing them in clay? The human is very much like that. Now, obviously, I realize that you might be saying, oh, Fraser, are you telling me that I need to leave my family or, no. I'm not saying that, but I'm going to share with you what I would be doing. I'm going to share with you the way that you need to think about this. Because one thing I will tell you straight out of the gate, I'm going to give you some just honest feedback in this conversation. And if the shoe fits, wear it. And if it doesn't apply to you, that's okay. But one of the things that I see with a lot of people is, and I say this often, is that amateurs guess and pros get pro help. Pros rely on professionals to leverage. They leverage knowledge to collapse the time horizon to their goal. Amateurs just bootleg and guess. They chat GPT the heck out of everything. I've seen people that are, reasonably successful entrepreneurs that cannot make a decision to save themselves when it comes to their health. And I know that they're going off and just chat GPTing the crap out of stuff. And I'm telling you, their results suck. And I've seen them dog paddle for years. They're still overweight. They still look like garbage. There's still a bad representation to their kids and their tribe of what's possible. And then they come onto social media and they talk about standards and hard work and discipline. And I'm like, look, I get what you're saying, but the elephant in the room is you. You are the elephant in the room. People don't believe what you say because they look at you and your body doesn't even embody that value system. You have to be able to look in the mirror and recognize that. And it's a hard thing for people, especially if you're a teacher or a leader and you've got a bit of an ego. But your ability to see that and go, you know what? I need to start operating like a pro. And I explained it like I said. You're collapsing the time horizon to your goal. There's a lot of people out there who don't even understand the value of having a mentor. I've got people in my family, my extended family, that could not wrap their head around the amount of money that we've invested in mentors and coaching over the last couple of years. They'd be bewildered and gobsmacked. Why do you need coaches for all these things. Well, I need coaches for all these things so I don't end up having a life that looks like yours. Because you are a byproduct of no coaches. And that's why you are out of shape. It's why your relationships aren't very good. It's why your business sucks and that you're struggling financially. We live in a world now where there are so many talented people around us. And the way I like to think about getting people to help me, and this is how I would propose it to you, is that you're at point A. So wherever you are right now, that's point A. Your goal is to get to point Z. That's the target. That's the big dream. That's the great, awesome body you want, or the amazing business, or whatever that target is. Now, you could go out there and just bootstrap the heck out of stuff and guess and kind of stumble through life and try a bunch of different things like I see people doing. One day they're doing a fasting protocol, the next day they're doing a carnivore diet, the next day they're doing a detox juice cleanse. It's like all over the place, like fire hosing tactics and just praying to Jesus that something works. And that's how amateurs operate. And that's why people have very substandard results. And you might get to your target eventually, but it will take you a long time. And I would even go as far to say that most people will never actually make it to the target operating that way. But at the very least, it's going to take you a long time, and there's going to be a lot of pain and suffering. And then when you get there, you're going to have processes that you've established that are so inefficient and have such a low ROI that it's very hard for you to sustain the result. This is a challenge that people have with 75 Hard, is that they come in and they'll be like, 75 Hard, it's a great system. And I actually think it is a good idea. It's a great idea, but the challenge that people have is they don't bring a good protocol into the system. So 75 Hard, for those of you who don't know, it's basically like a sort of a lifestyle challenge where there's certain requirements. You have to work out a certain amount of times each day and week. You have to, walk. You have to read some books. You have to drink some water. You have to stick to a diet. It's got pretty loose parameters in certain areas, and that's basically to account for the fact that you can decide what your diet looks like. It's not very specific. And obviously it's designed that way to give people the ability to adapt it based on their biofeedback, their physiology, their blood work. But people obviously don't really do that. So they're usually eating a pretty myopic, one-dimensional diet that's just focused on calories and macros, but not micronutrients and not the quality of the food. They're overtraining, so they're doing 2 times a day, but it's gut-busting stuff. They're burning out their nervous system because they're just overtraining and under-recovering. And so when you do that, not only does your sleep get worse, your cravings go up, you feel more hungry. So now you're trying to fight yourself and your hunger even more. And it's just this unsustainable stumbling forward that I see people do. And it's painful to witness. But at the same time, one of the things that I abide by is let people have their experience. That's why you never see me come online and start to throw out unsolicited advice to people. Let people have their experience. And in fact, there's a lot that you can learn from rock bottom. I don't wish it on people, but if someone's going to walk that path, maybe they'll learn some very valuable lessons out of that. I've had guys I've seen in the entrepreneurial space that have been 50 to 100 pounds overweight for years. And they've messaged me numerous times. Every now and then they'll stick their head out of the parapet and they'll reach out and I'll respond, and then they don't respond. And they just disappear back into the ether again. And they just continue this ghosting cycle of shame where the pain reaches a climax and they feel like they absolutely need to change. And the idea of having the conversation with me almost lulls them into the sense that they've actually done something. And then they disappear and they just keep doing the same ridiculous nonsense. And you know what? I don't even say anything. Let people have their experience. And when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And so what I would tell you guys is one thing that you can learn from this is that if you find yourself just repeating patterns of behavior and you're just dog pedaling through life and you're getting the same result over and over, or the result that you're trying to get is burning you out, you need a better system. And I would say that the smartest, most savvy operators are the ones that act like professionals, and they get someone like me to come in and really help them refine their processes. So a lot of my guys at the high level, they actually end up doing less. It's very, very efficient. There's a lot of habit stacks. There's a lot of streamlined leverage plays. I'm very, very good at this, by the way. And I'm not an arrogant person. But one thing that I will absolutely claim is that I am one of the best in the industry at what I do. And anyone who works with me at the highest level, they often say that. And it's because I have such a depth of diverse knowledge around all these different systems in the body. And I would say a lot of fitness people, they just obsess about the weight loss and the physical result, but they don't think of you as a husband or a wife, a professional, someone who's busy, someone who's traveling, someone who has children. And they just think that you can spend hours in the gym, hours doing cardio, hours doing meal prep, and that you live in this little controlled bubble. And that's not reality. You know, one of the best gifts that I ever had was coaching the former American Idol musician Chris Daughtry. So I'm very close with him. I've worked one-on-one with him for a number of years at this point. I've been out to video shoots for some of his biggest singles, where we went out to like Mojave Desert, for example, numerous times in Hollywood. He has me come out with him because I'm so good at manipulating what he does in real time to get him in the shape of his life for these amazing videos. And one of the things that I found was really helpful was that because he lives such a high-pressure, busy life, he's got children, he's got a wife, he travels a bunch, he's in Europe right now at the time of the recording of this podcast, and you have to be very, very adaptable and very versatile. You cannot, that's the problem with a lot of amateurs, is they say things like, oh, I'll get back to you when I'm through this busy season of my life. That is one of the worst excuses you could come up with. If you find yourself saying things like that, that's part of why you are in the position you're in. Because think about this logically. What it implies is that you need to have your environment and your situation to be perfect for you to make progress, or you won't even start and you don't even try. So when you do have like the perfect little window of time, what happens when you get busy again? What happens when life throws a curveball at you? Is your whole result just going to implode on itself? And that, my friend, is what people do all the time. I actually tell people the highest operators I've come across, they do the opposite to that. They actually commit to the stuff when they feel like there's a maelstrom coming down on them, when they feel like they're in the middle of a storm, when they're in the middle of like a travel schedule or they're moving house. And they recognize, they're like, you know what, man, like I'm moving right now, or I'm in a big business deal, we're trying to wrap things up. This is obviously a very busy time for me, but I just realized it's never going to be the perfect time. And if I can operate during this blizzard in my life, this winter storm, and I can become so proficient in navigating and raising my baseline in this condition, I can achieve anything. And that's the way you need to think about this. And when it comes to collapsing the time horizon towards your goal, basically, if you get someone who's walked this path before, it's like punching a wormhole from A to Z, but you're like expediting the process. So you're removing a lot of the failed attempts, a lot of the dead-end streets that people go down. See, people think that, I've had people say, oh, I'm just going to go and use ChatGPT. And what they don't realize is that AI is only as good as your ability to ask the right questions. And most people, they don't actually know what to ask. Like, you have some serious blind spots. You don't know what you don't know. I mean, I'll just rattle off a few examples for you right now. So most people, they think that they need to throw in extra cardio each day, and that they all have to dedicate like an hour in the gym to do extra cardio to lose the body fat. That to me is a very stupid way of doing things, because you now lose an hour. And how are you going to sustain that long term when you're busy? What I do instead is I get my guys to get a walking pad and a standing desk, and we just send emails and get on Zoom calls and work while we're walking at this low speed in the walking pad. I'm literally walking as I record this. And in that way, you stack in all these steps and all this low calorie burn through the day effortlessly. And it's easy to sustain your body fat without you having to burn your butt off in the gym doing cardio. That's one example. There are so many others that are like that. Another example is, someone once said to me, "Oh man, you have such prominent abs. How much ab work do you do?" And I said I probably do abs about twice a week, 2 sets twice a week. And they're like, "Wow, man, I do 500 sit-ups a day." And I'm like, it's a great example of very inefficient processes. And what I mean is this. If you understand the hierarchy of what actually burns fat, you'll realize that the big muscle groups create the biggest metabolic response. And so that's why I will typically program with my students legs twice a week and back twice a week. Because those big muscle groups like your quads, like your lats, they have a much bigger muscle building and fat burning capacity. And so what will happen is when you train those big groups, you torch all that extra body fat, and that's what's going to actually bring your abs through. That's what brings the abs through. And then obviously you're doing very intentional ab work where you're taking those sets right to the edge of mechanical failure. That 2 minutes of work that I do beats that guy's 500 sit-ups every day. And if you apply that logic to 20, 30, 50 different concepts, can you imagine the difference in magnitude and in effort and struggle that I would have versus someone else? When I tell you that I don't actually struggle that much to sustain the result that I have, I genuinely mean that. It's not me just showboating or trying to make it sound glamorous. Doesn't mean it's easy. You do have to cultivate a level of self-respect and discipline over time. But I've done episodes on habit stacking. I talk about habits and all these types of things all the time. And I talk about these big ROI plays in all the episodes. And that's a big part of what gets the best result. I had a guy, and this is very common. Guys will come and they want to get in really good shape. They want to get jacked. And what they think they need to do is they think they need to blast a bunch of steroids. They're like, "Oh man, I think, if I'm on TRT, should I go up to 300 or 500 milligrams a week? Should I add in some clenbuterol? Maybe I'll do some tren." The first thing I'll say is, unless you plan on being a professional bodybuilder, I would steer clear of all that stuff. It's just going to shorten your lifespan. It's going to de-optimize your energy. You are not going to perform at a high level using that stuff. And the thing that I find silly with people that do that is that at a certain point, you're going to have to stop because you're going to build so much toxicity in your organs. It's terrible for your heart. You're more than likely going to give yourself a heart attack or stroke if you haven't had one already. But as soon as you stop using those things, all those gains just disappear because they were completely contingent on you running those compounds. I genuinely believe, and I know this to be true because I've done it with myself and I've done it with a number of my high-level students, is that I genuinely believe that when you understand how to get the body into what I call a flow state, where the inflammation is really low and you're very insulin sensitive and you're very metabolically stimulated and you have very good partitioning ratios. Basically, that comes back to sort of your anabolic signaling. So your body is very good at taking calories and just shunting them in the right places. It'll shunt those calories into muscle glycogen. It'll shunt those calories into stored liver glycogen. It'll keep that blood sugar level very stable, and it will keep minimal amounts of calories pushing into fat cells. And that's how I've been able to get the result that I have. I'm about 210 pounds, 5'9", probably about 6 to 7% body fat. And I don't track any calories. I eat intuitively at this point. I'm up at probably 2 or 3 a.m. every day without an alarm. And I love it. I love being up that early because I have all this time to learn. That people say, how do you know so much? What do you think is going to happen when you're up at 2 or 3 a.m. every morning and you spend the first 3 hours of the day just learning because you're such a curious person? You become a savant. And in many ways, I feel like as much as I struggled at school with ADHD and all these issues that I had, I look back now and I realize what I had was a gift and I was just in the wrong environment. And that's exactly what I'm going to be sharing with you guys as it pertains to the environment that you find yourself in. Like if you're around people that are having disempowered conversations, that have a scarcity mindset, that think like broke people, you are going to be one of them. So if you are around a bunch of fat people that are broke, that comes with a certain set of characteristics. Typically the people that are lazy, they're sedentary. And when I say lazy, I mean they don't move. They sit around a lot. Physically lazy. So they sit around a lot, they don't move. They'll often just, maybe if they do work out, they'll just kind of jam it in when they can. It's very hit and miss. It's very sporadic. They don't have good coping mechanisms when it comes to their food. So life will stress them. And the first thing they do is they self-medicate with food or a substance or both. And that's what keeps you stuck because you're not around people that remind you to reframe and that remind you to focus on the good and that say, hey, what's the lesson here? What's the lesson in this challenge? You know, I remember when my wife, before our son Xander was born, and my wife Lauren, we were in and out of the hospital here in Knoxville 7 times. It was very, very stressful. We'd already been through a miscarriage before. And for anyone who's been through a miscarriage, it is a very emotionally traumatic experience, especially for the woman. But as a man, to see your wife go through that, it's challenging. And we thought she was having another miscarriage. And at one point, we actually thought she had one. And it was just that heavy, sinking feeling, like you felt powerless. And in those moments, people typically do all the wrong things. They have a pity party for themselves, and they just eat a bunch of donuts, Domino's pizza, and just act like a slop. And I remind myself, I think to myself, during those hardest seasons of life, that's when you actually need to step up to the plate and be the leader that you know you need to be. And I also think about it from a place of, if I eat a bunch of crap and I don't look after myself, I'm going to drive up my anxiety and decrease my mood even more. Because remember, inflammation in the brain is anxiety. It is a mood disorder. Mental health issues are inflammation in the brain. When you eat inflammatory foods, you're driving up inflammation in your body across the board and in your brain. Do you actually want to feel that way? I future pace it. So I say, how do I want to feel once I finish doing this thing? Do I want to feel like a bloated, foggy mess? Or do I want to feel light and sharp and proud of myself that I stuck to my guns? Often I think to myself, how do I want to feel the next day? When I wake up in the morning, do I want to feel foggy and heavy and not able to concentrate to save myself? Or do I want to feel proud of myself, sharp and ready to go and able to do that podcast with absolute clarity? You've got to future pace how you want to feel. It's so important. And part of it comes back to this idea that I think a lot of coaches, they don't know how to meet someone where they are. That's one of the things that I've found that I am pretty good at, is that if you have someone that is really struggling, you just throwing a bunch of structure and a bunch of advanced training concepts and a bunch of advanced peptide tactics at them is very overwhelming. It's so overwhelming, they will literally just give up and implode. But equally, if you don't push people enough and be a little bit carefrontational at times, that's also a challenge. Coaches fall onto each end of that spectrum. Some of them are just people pleasers, and they just allow people to keep floundering and doing the wrong things, and no one tells them the truth. No one tells you the truth. You know, I've had very challenging conversations with people before, and I will say, most of the time, they are received with a level of like respect and understanding. Every now and then they're not, and I just recognize that's that person's choice. If they're going to choose to react negatively to me trying to help them, they're clearly not ready to change yet. And that's just their journey. Let people have their experience. But what I would say is that when you're thinking about transformation, you need to frame it differently. See, people think of like health coaching and fitness stuff as this sort of luxury item that, oh, I'll just do it when I have time. When I have more money, I'll do it. I hate that mentality. I feel like that's such a normal person. It's like a broke person mentality to have. Because the way I think about it is that you are your best ROI, meaning return on investment. People think, oh, where should I invest my money? Bitcoin or crypto, gold, stocks, silver, futures markets, real estate. Where should I put it? And I'm like, if you haven't invested into yourself first, into your health and personal development first, that's the biggest thing you need to be working on first. Because you are the high tide that rises all ships. Your ability to implement higher level tactics and take on more pressure and stress comes back to your physical health. I can handle a lot of physiological and psychological stress at this point because I put myself in a position where I'm stressing the system acutely every day. It's called hormesis, or the hormetic effect. So the hormetic effect is basically this principle in science that has a short-term burst of physiological stress, creates long-term strength and resilience. It's for example, it's why wild blueberries have a lot more antioxidants in them than just your farm-grown blueberries, because they're exposed to the elements, the wind, the rain, the cold, the heat. That hormetic stress creates a richer food choice. And so I opt for those things because I want to take in those higher ROI foods. That's where people just don't think about this stuff. When you think about these details, that's what compounds and makes the difference. Another thing is like sauna or cold plunge. If you were to sit in a sauna for 5 hours, you'd die of heat stroke and dehydration. If you were to sit in a cold plunge for 3 hours, you'd die of hypothermia. But short-term bursts of these things actually create physiological strength. The same is true for training, working out. If you've never worked out before, you work out and you do legs, and all of a sudden, and you were super sore for 3 days because you don't have that hormetic stress dialed up yet. Because I'm constantly putting myself in that hormetic zone, it creates such a level of long-term physiological strength that you can handle a lot of pressure and stress in life. So the business stuff, the marriage stuff, the parental stuff, the family stuff, the world events, the pressures you put on yourself to achieve the goals and dreams and things you want. Part of your challenge in getting to those things, the rate limiting factor is you cannot sustain the pressure long enough. The pressure starts to break you down. Your nervous system starts to break. And that's when you find yourself sleeping in or not sleeping well or taking naps in the day and snacking and eating and just doing all the things that people do that slowly take them further and further off the path. And then before you know it, you're back where you were. So you've got to think about it from a place of consciously exposing yourself to these stress factors. And one of the things, so I'm going to go through and just tell you guys a couple of the different levels of programming and coaching that I have, because I want you to understand what I do. Because if you've listened to every episode to this point, this is 20 episodes. I think at this point, you clearly know that the way I operate is different. And I want to show you what I do when I'm coaching people and give you tools and tips that you can go away and use to get a better result. So you don't have to do 75 hard for the 8th time. You don't have to be that guy that just keeps talking about hard work, discipline, and grit, but you're 50 pounds overweight. You don't have to be that person who, and you know if this is you. You know if you've been slacking through winter and you've been getting fat and you're not feeling good. You can talk about financial wins all you want, but people will look at you and they'll be able to tell if you've actually been winning. There's a lot of people in the business world that just put their weight on how well they're doing financially. And I think to myself, I want mentors in my corner that have all the different areas of their life locked in. Why? Because if someone's very good at business, but they're 50 pounds overweight, they're swollen and inflamed looking, their blood pressure looks high, they're like a little Michelin man, that tells me that the routines, the habits, the systems that they apply in their business to generate that business outcome has resulted in the physical result too. And if I model what they're doing, which is probably on the phone all day, just reactive, sitting on my butt all day and just like talking to people on calls and just like bending over backwards with no boundaries. That might work well in business, but you will sell your soul and you won't even have time for yourself. And that means that you'll miss the workouts. That means you'll sit on your butt all day. That means you'll just skip meals and then you'll eat fast food or you just snack on stuff that's convenient because you don't have quote unquote time. And then you end up looking like that. And so I want people that have figured out things on every level because they don't just value the money in the bank account. They value the health metrics because, again, your ability to have a good life and have a long life and to feel good about what you're doing comes back to your health. And I absolutely think that myself and you have an obligation to your children and your family to be a better version of yourself. If you are out of shape and you have kids and you are letting your kids slowly start to get out of shape, think about the times when you went to high school and you were fat and think about how self-conscious and challenging that was for you. Go back to those times. Think about the pain that you went through. Your behavior right now is going to proliferate that pain in them. Do you want to do that? Because if you don't, you've got to be different. Change starts with you. You are the high tide that rises all ships. You are the one that must go first. So this is not just like, oh, I want to get abs for the beach for my July vacation. This is a legacy play. This is how your children are going to remember you. Are they going to be embarrassed when you come to watch their game? Or are they going to be like, that's my dad? Be the latter. But beyond that, you have these big dreams with your business. You probably have these big career dreams. If you're burning out all the time and you're sick on and off and you're getting brain fog and you think you've got ADHD and you're popping pills, how do you think you're going to achieve these next levels and sustain them? You're going to absolutely crash and burn, and that's what I see with most people. Most people who come to me, they've allowed themselves to essentially crash and burn before they start to want to get help. And again, that's that example of like sometimes people have to hit that rock bottom, and it's unfortunate. But what I would say is the first point of action, when I was thinking to myself, what is going to be the way to help someone get to the next level in the most versatile way possible, was I created this 6-week signature course called the Anomaly Project. Now, what that is a fully broken down nutrition system where I use a lot of the macro bowl structure and principles. I even done a whole episode on Macro Bowl 101. It's a very detailed one, so if you want to learn more about that, go listen to that one on macro bowls. But I'm very strategic with the types of snacks that I put in the rotation. Like all the things that I put in with snacks, the main meals, they're high yield plays. So they're foods that have a good ROI, very, very nutrient dense. I also am a big fan of what I call healthy food upgrades. So I'm very good at finding healthier options for a lot of the vices that people have. And one of the challenges that a lot of fitness coaches run into is they get this purist mentality of like, oh, protein bars are junk. They're candy, they're junk food. And it's like, well, look, if someone is eating Twinkies and Twix bars and straight up garbage, don't you think it's a little bit better that they're eating a protein bar? Because people just forget where they came from. That's a lack of emotional awareness. So my mentality is meet people where they are, give them healthy food upgrades so they don't have to white knuckle the diet anymore. And then the result is a byproduct of getting into that flow state. And so my Anomaly Project, that 6-week process, is a fully structured nutrition protocol. And by the way, some people don't even track calories. I even have portions and an intuitive method. So I try to make the systems versatile. You can track calories because I realize some people are like left-brained and they like the data. But some people are kind of intuitive like me and they want to have more of an intuitive approach. And so with that, there's two different options. And beyond that, obviously I realize for a lot of people, they either train at home or maybe they go to the gym, but what do they do when they travel? What do they do when they go to business events? So to build out processes for every environment that you'll find yourself in, travel protocols, home workouts, gym workouts, for beginner or advanced. So it's like a sliding scale. So you help someone where they're at. That's so important. If you have a beginner and you're throwing some really complex lifts at them, like CrossFit weightlifting exercises, good luck. Not only they'll probably get injured, they'll quit because it's too complicated. But at the same time, like I mentioned with the ab work, you're going to have someone that doesn't understand the ROI of an exercise and gets them to do a bunch of silly little movements that take up a bunch of your time, but don't create a big metabolic response. Everything that we do has to be a high leverage play, especially if you're a busy professional, a business athlete. This is why I do this podcast, because I anticipate that people are going to have families and businesses and they're going to be feeling spread thin. How do we start in those seasons when we're not using those bullcrap excuses of like, I'll wait till I'm in a less busy season of my life? It's pathetic, man. Don't allow yourself to say that. Beyond that, we use smart supplementation. I've been in the game so long now. I've seen the universal base layer supplements that I find just work for people time and time again. Obviously, the brand is very important. Don't just go to CVS and buy some garbage off the shelf. You've got to do your due diligence. I think a good quality multivitamin, a good quality omega-3, some type of good quality mineral, trace mineral supplementation, creatine monohydrate, essential amino acids, and a good superfood protein powder, which are all in the course. The specific brands, everything. Because those are the typical supplements that plug all the holes. They fill the gaps. They complement everything you do with the diet. And it almost acts like a magnifier. It's exponential. So I would say at that level, with the Anomaly Project course, a good thing about this is you can rinse and repeat it. Most people will repeat it 2 or 3, 4 times. And if someone needs to lose 100 pounds, they just rinse and repeat till they get to their target. And at that point, they've done it so much they know how to sustain the model, and it's just a lifestyle. One of the other things that I really pride myself on is I have a very good mastermind group, and I do weekly calls where I talk all about tactics and mindset and psychology and habit stacking and the actual tools and tactics as well. But every morning, I jump into our Telegram channel and I drop morning mindset audio messages. I would say that one of the biggest pieces of feedback I've ever received from my high-level students was how much the mindset messages helped them. They're like, man, you're good at the diet stuff. You're good at telling me the supplements or the peptides and all different things. But what I found the most helpful was the mindset stuff, because that actually got me into a mental place where I was even able to stay on track and not give up and apply the tactics you were even talking about. And I have not missed a single day in those morning mindset messages since I started this process. There's been times where we're in the hospital and Lauren was having the subchorion hemorrhages. And once she was obviously stable and we were sleeping, I'd get up and I'd still do them because I value that process that much. So if you're looking for a process that is really designed for aspiring high performer, but is very dynamic and versatile and more of like a lifestyle play, but at the same time, a very potent set of levers to pull. So yeah, it's a lifestyle play, but it will absolutely expedite your transformation fast. And then you'll learn how to sustain it. And like I said, You'll be in an environment with people that are winning and people that are reframing their challenges. That's what I wanted to mention at the beginning. If you don't have a good support network around you, having that online foundation is fundamental. That's precisely why people do ChatGPT diets and training and they suck, because they don't have a solid support network of leaders and people around them who are walking the path. And I would actually say that's the key element that's missing. Because when we don't have connection, we default to addiction. I'll say that again. When you don't have good connection, you will default to addiction. Addiction looking like food. Addiction looking like substances. That's what exactly holds people back. So it's why I put such an emphasis on the connectivity standpoint. So that's like the first step. The Anomaly Project 6-week course is like the first stepping stone into my world, where you get those touch points, getting into proximity to me beyond just consuming this podcast. And I would tell you that it's absolutely worth you doing that. Because if you want to perform better in your job, you want to have more bandwidth for your family, you want to feel more confident and just a higher standard of caliber of person about yourself, this is like a requirement. This is a requirement at this point. It's what separates, like I said, the amateurs from the pros. Now, the next level above that is my Business Athlete Council. I'm in a bunch of different mastermind groups. I spend thousands on mastermind groups a month. And one of the common things that I noticed about all these different groups is that they just talk a bunch about business, but none of them have very good habits and very good health systems. Now, some of them obviously do. You know, there's some people in these groups that are healthy, but it's not a founding principle in any of these groups. They just talk about creating videos and sales conversations and funnels and email sequences and business stuff, which is obviously important. It's why I'm there. But like I've mentioned, the challenge that most people face, and probably the challenge that you face, is that when you feel like crap, when your energy's low and you're getting a ton of brain fog and you're getting anxious and your mood is not good, you are not going to be able to perform and execute a lot of these tactics they're going on about on a day-to-day basis. Or if you do, you're going to burn out by lunchtime and you're going to have to take a nap. And that's what a lot of people are like. Their production is so low, it takes forever to achieve anything. And then they get to the end of the day and their nervous system and energy is so zapped. They're irritable. They don't have any bandwidth for their kids. You're grouchy because you've had a long, hard day. And so you're just this moody person to be around. And maybe you don't even see that, but I guarantee you often you probably are. And then at the end of the day, we just stress eat because you've had a rough day and you just need to like release. And that's where the weight gain happens. That's when the drinking starts. That's when the sleep de-optimizes. And you just get caught on this roller coaster. It's this challenging roller coasters. And I have compassion for that. Life is not this easy thing. Like, transformation is not easy. But it does get easier. And it is made easier when you're in the right rooms. And so the Business Athlete Council, I'm very proud of this. I really wanted to create a place with professionals and A players and aspiring A players who hold themselves to higher standards, who use health systems as a foundation base to becoming that stronger, better version of themselves, where they can then apply that to everything they're doing. They can apply that to their business. They can apply that to the production and the work they do. They can apply that to their parenting. They can apply that to their marriage. They can apply that to their team and their leadership. And they become that high tide that rises all ships. To me, this is one of the best business investments that you could make. See, a broke person's going to think about this and they're going to go, oh man, I can't afford that. I'll do that when I make more money. Or I'll do that in a different season. I hope I can do that someday. Hope is not a strategy. And what I tell people is that if you truly want to get to the next level in your life, you need to actually act now to change the variables, to create a different path, to actually generate a different outcome. Otherwise, you'll just keep dog pedaling. Think about how many people do that, where if you look back over your life, you might have had some dreams 10 years ago, and you're still in the kind of similar place you are today. Maybe there's something you want to achieve 5 years ago and you still haven't done it. Because we get stuck in these ruts of patterns of behavior and just thinking that something else is going to change outside of us. So with a Business Athlete Council, that's really where we talk higher level mechanics. Like we will review blood work. We'll look at food sensitivity testing, hair mineral analysis. This is where we can kind of get into the group and basically help figure out what are all the different mechanics and levers that need to happen to get someone a really amazing result. Everyone's different. You know, that's the beautiful thing about a process like this is it's not a one size fits all. Like your diet's most likely going to look a bit different than mine based off your blood work, based off your food sensitivity, based off how your body is responding to things. And if you were just left to try and guess this or use ChatGPT, it would be so difficult. There'd be so much guessworking and like failed attempts, and you would just burn yourself out over and over and over again. And that's what people do. So you want a high-level surgical approach where we can talk about peptides. We can talk about hormone replacement therapy. We can talk about optimizing gut health. We talk about optimizing brain chemistry and ADHD. We understand the immune system and the nervous system. We know how to have higher leverage ROI training. So training in a way where you're in the gym and you're getting a better result because you're pulling these bigger levers. I do little training video demonstrations. We do weekly calls. I have a Telegram channel where I answer questions every day. I'm in the group posting reviews, supplement reviews, peptide reviews, strategies around what I do. I'm getting people to post their accountability logs in the group, and I'm literally giving them high-level feedback on, hey, change X, Y, and Z. Add this one thing in. Tape it back on this one thing. And it's like fine-tuning a race car engine. That's one of the things that I like about this process is that you don't have to come in and like overhaul your entire life in one day. A lot of people operate that way. They start a process and they want to change 50 things because they're so impatient and they feel like they've got to sprint this marathon. And that's the worst way you could do it. And instead we come in and we slow it down and we get very methodical and we adapt one or two variables every few days. And can you imagine the amount of change that you will see if you adapt one or two variables over every few days over the course of 2 months, 3 months, 6 months? And I see people lose 100 pounds or get in the shape of their life or get new job opportunities. And they just completely transform. And they even become such a lighthouse that their family's eating macro bowls, their families go taking walks with them. Like their community sees you as a freaking leader. Your community sees you as that person, that linchpin. We need more of that. You know, we don't have enough people in this world that are really holding themselves to high standards. And quite frankly, that's why the world is so chaotic. Because men have got complacent and allowed weak beta males to take control. Because we just want to sit down and just not rock the boat and just kind of blend in. We need to change that. And it starts with you. And obviously, for the ladies, I would still tell you, be your own version of that. Be a strong leader. Be a lighthouse. Be a matriarch. There's something noble about stepping up to that plate and wanting to do that. And like I said, with the Business Athlete Council, that's really engineered around how do you take someone and create the best business athlete you can. Someone that's winning in business, but they're doing it in a really healthy way where they're very inspiring and they have so much extra energy they can pour into their family and they live this freaking beautiful life. At the end of the day, I ask myself, how can I help you live a more beautiful life where you feel truly connected to what you're doing? That's the key. So I actually have a full breakdown for my Business Athlete Council. If you want that, drop me a message. The last thing is my Peak X Concierge one-on-one. That's my high-level stuff. At this point, I've been in the game long enough where my high level is top shelf, like Rolls-Royce sought after. I have wait lists for this type of thing. At this point, I will actually turn people away because I have to be selective with who gets on board, because if it's someone that is not in a place where they're going to be a good student, it will not work. And what I would tell you is that if you want a process, that is going to create the most streamlined, efficient, user-friendly protocol you've ever experienced, where you get an absolutely insane result, but you do it in a way that's very, very healthy, and you can do it anywhere. On the road, traveling in different countries, while you're sick, anywhere. And your whole family can come along with you, and you become that strong, proud version of yourself. This is it. So at that level, there's a lot of one-on-one touch points. With my Business Athlete Council, that's more of like an elite group setting, which I do think helps. With my PKX, you will get the group setting. You will be part of that Business Athlete Council as well, but you will get the extra one-on-one touch points with me. We will talk directly. We will talk one-on-one. It's more of a done-for-you process as well. So like with the Business Athlete Council, I kind of give you feedback on how to approach your diet changes. By the way, you'll get access to my Anomaly Project course if you're in the Business Athlete Council. So you can use that as a base if you want, or you can bring your own structure and systems to the party, and I can give you feedback on that. So you have options. But at the Peak X level, the high level one-on-one, I sit down and I actually help you design out new systems based on all my experience and knowledge. And obviously we bounce the ideas around and I talk to you about it all, because it's never just a monologue where I'm dictating to you. This is a partnership where we're going to bounce ideas off, and I want to learn about you and the mechanics around how you think and operate. Because there's a level of emotional intelligence that must be applied to this process. It is just not inputs and outputs. You know, people say things like, "Oh, just eat less and move more," as a way to lose body fat. Yeah, great, Sherlock. That's really useful because most people know this. But it's one thing to know it, but how do you apply that consistently in your life when you're dealing with all life's curveballs and stresses? That's the difference. That's where the emotional intelligence comes in. And what I would tell you is having someone in your corner that's walked the path and that's guided many people up the mountain is absolutely invaluable. You know, I think about cost, right? One of the things that people often think about is they think about cost as like an hourly rate. And I explain it a bit like this. Imagine if you needed a root canal and you were going to go to a dentist and you got quotes from two dentists. One dentist said, it's going to cost you $3,000, but it's going to take me 12 hours. And the other dentist said it's going to cost you $3,500, but it'll take you 1 hour. Who would you rather go to? Would you rather save $500 and spend 12 hours at a dentist? That's how I tell people to think about coaching. Would you rather get to your target faster in a more sustainable, proficient way? Or would you rather it be this drawn out, painful, arduous process? The other thing that I want you to understand and think about is there's a story around this. So there was a big, those big cargo ships. So the big old cargo ship, one of those huge tankers. And the captain of the cargo ship, something was wrong with the engine. You know, these massive engines in these ships are huge. Something was wrong with this engine. He couldn't figure it out. So the ship was stuck in the dock. And all this cargo's in there, and he's like, oh man, if I don't figure this out, all this cargo is going to go bad. It's a lot of pressure, a lot of stress. And he spent a bunch of time trying to figure out what was wrong with the engine. He even ChatGPT'd it. And ChatGPT had him running around doing all sorts of things. He's spending days trying to figure this thing out, and he just still couldn't. He got a guy to come in, this specialist, this engine specialist, comes in, and he has a look at the engine, and he gives it a little bit of a tap and kind of goes to a few different areas. And then he pulls out his toolbox. And in his toolbox, he's got a bunch of different tools. It's quite a diverse sort of toolkit. And he gets out a couple of obscure tools that are different. They're not your standard stuff. And he tinkers with a few little valves, and he gets out a few unique tools, and he kind of plays with it for 10 minutes. And then all of a sudden, boom, and the engine just like starts ripping. And the captain's like, oh, thank you. So glad. And the captain's thinking he's going to say, well, he did it in 10 minutes, so he's probably charging $200 an hour. So 10 minutes of $200 an hour, he might bill me $50. And the guy says, that's $50,000. And he's like, what? How come it's so expensive? You only spent 10 minutes doing this. And he said, you're not paying me for the time. You're not paying me for the minutes. You're paying me for the thousands and thousands of hours that I've used to master this skill where I can come in and do this in 10 minutes. That's what you're paying for. And that, my friend, is how you need to think about transformation. If you're just thinking about cost, oh, this is going to cost me so much. What is the cost of you not doing stuff? What's the cost of you sitting on your butt like you have been, guessing and dog pedaling like you have been? What's the cost on that with your relationship when your spouse just feels like you're not getting anywhere? And you keep promising, we're going to do this, we can achieve this, and you don't. And you just keep staying the same. Or the cost of you feeling wore out and burned out and struggling mentally. And then you know that you're irritable and you know you're grouchy and you're not connected with your children. And you can see it. You can feel it in them. That guilt. What is the cost of that? What's the cost of, I've had people have to spend a night in hospital because they got kidney stones on their daughter's birthday. What's the cost of you missing your daughter's birthday because you're that unhealthy? You spend time in hospital for kidney stones. Things that can absolutely be avoided. What is the cost of you spending all the time at doctor's visits, getting scans and tests done because you're unhealthy, and then all the insurance and copay and all that stuff? What's the cost of you being so physically unhealthy that you can no longer go for that beautiful hike in the mountains with your family like you used to? I have people in my family that no longer can do that because they're that unhealthy. Their joints are that bad. And there's people I know that are the same age as them that could go hiking every day. And they get to experience these beautiful experiences because they showed up and they put in the work. That's the real cost to me. It's cost now or cost later. You're going to pay somewhere. I would rather spend more money on quality foods and coaching and mentoring and unlock levels in my life where I'm like, man, this is awesome. I'm so glad that I did this. Like, I feel better. I'm proud of myself. I can see myself building this dream, this legacy. I can see people saying, hey, you're a good dad. Like, your kids are really awesome. I can see the way that the kids run up to me and they love to get a big hug from daddy. I can see the way that Lauren will leave me little notes saying how proud she is of me. That to me is everything. And I want you to experience more of that, but it's going to come at a quote-unquote cost. So you can either see the monetary stuff as an upfront investment to get to that level, or you can just keep telling yourself that you cannot do it till things are easier. And the newsflash is things are not going to get easier. You just get better. And so you can either stay the same like an amateur and just continue to dog paddle, or you can step it up, create massive change, and build the bridge as you cross it. The guys that get the best results, they're the ones that leap out of the plane and they build the parachute on the way down. They're the ones that build the bridge as they cross it. They're like, you know what? I don't have all the answers, but I don't need all the answers. I just need a little bit of faith, some courage, and I will figure things out as I go because I've got a good mentor in my corner. So whether you come to me, at the end of the day from this discussion, whether you come to me and you get my PKX one-on-one, or you get my Business Athlete Council, or you get my Anomaly Project Signature course, I don't care. If you want to go to someone else, if you feel like someone else is going to be a better option for you, go there. But get someone to help you. Stop bootstrapping your crap. The bootstrapping is why you have an average result, and that's just the truth. And you will always feel like you're never truly ready. You will always feel like it never quite fits your budget. And the only way that happens is if you force that change at the front end and like grow into your new life. Every single person I see who's like a high roller, who's kicking butt, getting in great shape, has an amazing business, they all operate this way. By the way, they all move very fast. They make decisions quickly. So when I'm talking to them, not only do they not ask a lot of questions, they just make the decision. I've noticed that as a very, very common pattern. Whereas people that are really indecisive, that's a real issue that you need to work on. And you can argue all day long about you just want to be thorough and you just want to make sure that it's perfect. That's part of the problem. That OCD and that perfectionistic mindset is the thing that's holding you back. Because you got to realize a health process is never going to be perfect. It's full of ebbs and flows. And until you can embrace that, you are going to continue to struggle, my friend. Or you can be an outlier, you can be an anomaly, and you can operate differently. But it starts with a decision. So I want you to go out there today, and I want you to remind yourself that change can happen at any point. You can literally do it right now. But you've got to get out of your own way, and you've got to have a very strong, compelling vision for your life. And if you don't, you will continue to wheel spin. But look around you and model what works. The people that I see get the best results, they move quickly, they make decisions faster, they build the bridges, they cross it, they embrace a positive mindset, they reframe challenges they're going through, and they realize that if they start in a busy, challenging season of their life, that actually raises their baseline, it raises their standards. So that means whenever this happens again, they've been here before and they know exactly what to do. They're confident and they're competent. Can you hear that in my voice? That's certainty. Because I've seen this so many times now, it's a fact. So go out there today, act like a pro, get pro help wherever you go, and collapse that time horizon to your goal. Because your people, your dream, that's going to rely on you becoming that 2.0 version of yourself, and it starts today.